everybody. Thank you so much for listening back to the Save Your Tears podcast. This is your host, Wendy, and I'm back at it again with a new episode called Inner Child Healing. But before I even step into that matter, I do want to bring a little disclosure moving forward because I did have issues arising within the podcast. I know I'm getting big now. Oh my God, I'm getting issues. No, this happened recently. I had people who felt like some of my stories that I share on my podcast was about them, and it brought up a lot of issues. I just want to bring the disclosure out there that I have every right to speak about my experience within my podcast. I don't disclose any names. I don't bring out personal information in there. I speak about solely my experience and what does that experience lead to tools that I can give to people in my podcast. That's the whole purpose why I speak about it in the first place. And during my last few episodes, I was going through a real life issue where I was navigating those emotions, and I felt that it was a very great way for people to have an insight of what it really looks like, but also you obviously know what it looks like to go through something, so we can go together and try to figure it out, how to maneuver in the best way possible. And I think that's amazing, and I'm happy to do that. So just as much as it's within my right to share those experiences without disclosing any names, it's also within their right to do the same thing also, which they have done in the past. That is the sole purpose of my podcast. I'm not going to filter myself just because people feel that some of these stories are a personal attack, when in all actuality is sharing my real life experience. And that's it. So moving forward with the podcast, here we go. So thank you so much for listening. I am very, very excited for this one episode. It's about inner child healing. And you constantly see this in Instagram being like, hug your inner child. Like those motivational, positive quotes that you see on Instagram about inner child healing. But no one really specifies how to do that in the first place. Where did that even come from? Is that even a term? Is that even real? And yes, it is real. It's in therapy. They teach you this in therapy. They try to help you navigate sorry for my improper grammar, but they help navigate how to handle that kind of healing, which is very difficult because you're looking to really unravel and unpack all that shit and from your past and your childhood that it's not really fun to do, but in the end is so rewarding. So let's get into it. So what is the inner child? And I believe that the inner child is that small wounded, well, not even, just think of yourself as 10 years old, 6, 7, 10, whatever the age is, whatever you picture in your head, your inner child, the innocent child before going through anything, that was more so at peace, before experiencing the traumatic effects that you experienced. And how do you heal that inner child that is not heal, but how do you go back into that innocent child that had nothing to do with a lot of the experiences that you unfortunately experienced that impact you till this very day? So how do you do that? So one thing first, you have to acknowledge that a lot of your actions or a lot of your behavior really manifest a lot from your childhood. It really does, more than you think that it does. Like, it really it's crazy to me how you think back, and while I was going through therapy, they really pinpointed exactly my behaviors and why I did them because of the sole purpose of what I've experienced since I was a kid. So first things first, to healing an inner child is to acknowledge the fact that there is some behaviors that you do that is manifested or a result of either a traumatic effect or a lack of things that you didn't get as a child, right? So, for example, I'll bring my mess into the mix. When I was a kid, I felt very neglected from parents. I lacked a lot of love. I lacked a lot of awareness. I felt that I had to grow up very fast. as I got older, I tried to prove myself to show that I am lovable, or I have a hard time letting go of friends because I'm like, as a child, I grew up learning how to let go of that picture perfect family that was falling apart through divorce, and I was constantly chasing after people because growing up I saw my father chasing after my mom, and while the relationship wasn't that great, and I thought that was a representation of love, as I got older. When I got older, I realized a lot of my behaviors, I have a hard time letting go. I have a hard time walking away from situations that aren't healthy for me, whether it be friendships or relationships. I end up finding myself in those things where it wasn't healthy, and I had a hard time letting go and walking away because I growing up, Wendy as a child grew up to see you don't give up on the people you love. You don't give up on the people you love, and you would do everything and anything to fix that, because I saw that with my mother and father, right? So that's the first step. The first step is acknowledging the fact that there is some behaviors that you do now that was a result of what happened in the past when you were growing up. Another thing is know the relationship when you were younger. What did you crave most? What do you crave most now? Like, ask yourself these questions. So I call it the cross-examination period, where you start to cross-examine exactly what you go through as a child. What did I crave? For instance, what did I crave as a child? I always wanted my mom's attention. My mom was never there. Or I never had my father present, so I seek almost a father figure within my relationships. I get so closed off because I either don't know how to handle emotions because I lacked a lot of it when growing up, or I showed too much an emotion and I grew up that's a bad thing. A lot of inner child healing has a lot to do of unpacking from your past as a child. And it really manifests with all aspects of your life, not just relationships, not just friendships, but with the relationship of yourself, with the working environments that you're into, the habits that you end up going to, because you're trying to fill a void that your inner child had a lacking of. Which is true. So you have to acknowledge the fact that there's a lot of things about yourself that was a result of what you lacked, right? Growing up. Which is not your fault. So here's the thing. Wendy, I acknowledged it. I acknowledged that a lot of my behaviors, when you ask yourself the questions of, growing up, what did I lack? From my family, from my parents, what did I wanted the most growing up? When I go into relationships, why do I have a hard time letting go? Maybe think about it of a relationship between your parents. Was it when you grew up, do you see a representation of not letting go, seeing that you had to chase validation? Like, you have to really dissect yourself and cross-examine exactly and pinpoint everything, which is so overwhelming. So when you do this process, I suggest put a boundary of trying to do it for like once an hour, or try to make a list and being like, there's things about myself that I need to work on, things that my inner child is wounded from, and you have to make that child feel safe again. That's the only way to heal from it, right? So now that you did the list, now that you are taking your time, doing an hour a day, trying to see how to heal from these past wounds, because, it's just a saying, the inner child, but it has a lot to do with childhood wounds. So those wounds that were never fixed, those wounds that were continuously being reopened every time you go through a relationship, every time you go through a friendship, every time you feel that wound all over again when it was first inflicted upon you as a child, right? It's all about that. You see what I'm saying? Like, you're kind of getting the gist, bitch, right? But once you start that, and start unpacking and feeling those emotions and feeling like the anger, and you kind of feel a little bit insecure because you're really pinpointing a lot of things about yourself. You're also feeling a little ashamed. You're also feeling a lot of resentment towards the parties involved. Now, you feel those emotions. I don't want you to stick there. It's okay to feel, just don't stay there, because that's when you start hurting yourself. So what you do moving forward is being like, okay, all right, so I saw what contributed into a lot of behaviors of what I find negatively, and also what I feel have a void in within my childhood, my inner child, right? Which is very hard to admit. It's a really self-awareness, it's self-reflection, and it's digging deep, and it's very hard to admit that, hey, like, there's voids in me that was inflicted in my childhood, and I'm constantly, it's constantly being ignited every time I'm going through the same particular situation again, so how do you heal that? Acknowledging it and acting upon it. So after you feel those emotions, you need to stop seeking those validations from other people and start seeking peace within yourself. Now, for my instance, for anyone who's listening, how can I have closure or fix anything in my childhood if no one wants to say sorry, if my parents don't want to say sorry, or my dad or mom are not present, or there's just so much resentment, there's too much bad blood? Totally understand. I totally get it. I never grew up having a sorry, right? I made closure within myself. I knew growing up that I would never get a sorry for the things that I go through. Or maybe you can, but in the end of the day, whether you can or can't get a sorry or closure from someone else, closure begins with you. So I understood that this is what they did in this moment, and it has nothing to do with me. And I give myself some peace of mind and being like, I was a child going through all of this. I'm a very innocent being that had nothing to do with anything. And as much as I want to blame myself for a lot of things, as much as I try to chase things or anything, I didn't have to do that. It was the lacking of others, not a lacking of you. And understanding that is a very big step. And it hurts, but you can't just... You have to eradicate this illusion that you need validation and closure from someone else. You make it your own. As much as it's such a cliche answer and people are like, oh my God, what the fuck? Like, no, it's true, right? That's how I come to terms with a lot of my childhood wounds. Another thing is that making you feel safe again. Once you start filling up your voids by yourself, self-love and reflection, and being like, you know what, this is what happened to me. It was not right. It was not okay. I felt like I needed to chase after love because I lacked a lot of love growing up. I feel like I had to chase after partners and not give up on them because that's what I saw growing up. I try to seek validation about my worth because I didn't have a parent telling me that. I didn't have a good uphold family to tell me anything. You have to eradicate that illusion. Start filling yourself, those holes. You got to start filling those voids with yourself. And that's when you start to heal that inner child and talking with yourself. It's about self-love and self-reflection because you're looking at yourself as a child and you're being like, it wasn't your fault. It wasn't your fault. I'm taking care of you. I choose you. You are loved. You are worthy. You are valid. Your feelings were valid. You didn't have to go through that. And you start healing by embracing yourself with that. Okay? Healing the inner child within you is a very self-love, self-work, and self-awareness tactic. And it's so fulfilling when you do it. And it will feel horrible in the beginning, but when you finally do it, even right now as I'm talking about it, it brings a sense of peace. You stop seeking validation. I'm at a point in my life where I have lost a lot of people in my life who particularly don't like me. For whatever reason it may be, you will always be the villain of someone's story, right? Who cares? I could care less what people think about me. You know, they're going to have this perception of me. What I do know about myself is that I'm a very genuine person. I'm very truthful. I come in with the real shit. I don't sugarcoat anything. I'm not a yes man. I am at a point where I don't have to prove anything to anybody. So when someone comes and tells me all these issues, I'm at a point where I have to double take myself and be like, I don't have to waste my breath. Like, I don't have to prove to you. No matter what I say, people are going to think what they're going to think. And I'm choosing to choose me and find peace. So I'm going to fall back, or I'm going to just, you know what, let you think the way that you think. Because I'm not going to convince anyone else. And that is in a point where you're just like, I'm okay if you think of me this way. I'm okay. I don't seek the validation of being approved by people. I don't seek to be liked by people anymore. I'm at a point where in my life where I'm choosing peace for myself and choosing to walk away and choosing to let go and choosing to move on from things in the best way possible, choosing not to fight back, choosing to not waste my breath on things that particularly I don't have to do anymore. I don't have to prove anything to anybody. The only person I need to prove anything to is myself, and that's it. And that's my point in life, and it doesn't make people bad. I don't want you to mistake the what I'm saying here. What I'm saying is you have every right to defend yourself. You have every right to say how you feel, but at the same time, it's like, okay, I know what the truth is. I don't need to do that. Like, why? Like, oh, I don't have to argue with this person who's treating me bad. Instead, I'm going to walk away. You know, I'm not going to tell someone how to treat me in a relationship. I don't have to tell them that. They should know. So I'm going to walk away. If someone is not seeing your worth, if someone is igniting these insecurities when growing up, you know, a partner that's treating you bad, a friendship that's treating you bad, or seeking validation, all that stuff, like all that, like if they're not doing that, you're gonna have so much self-love after healing all these childhood wounds that you're like, I won't settle for this anymore, because I'm at a point where in my life where the little child, the little Wendy, is no longer chasing after love. The little child, the inner child, Wendy, is like, okay, I don't have to prove anything to anybody anymore. Oh, the little child, Wendy, is like, okay, me walking away is not giving up. Me walking away is choosing my peace and choosing to let go and move forward. You know, little Wendy is like, you know what, even if they hate me, even if they say that they dislike me and I'm this and I'm that, I know what I am, and I know I'm a genuine person, and I don't have to prove that to anybody. I am fine. I'm going to be okay. So having that dialogue with yourself is called inner child healing, because now you have so much self-love, self-awareness, and heal those wounds that you don't have to seek all these issues, respond back to this behavior anymore. Because the Wendy prior to filling those voids would be like, I'm going to defend myself. I'm going to waste my breath. I'm going to tell a partner how to treat them. I'm going to keep chasing them even though they're going to treat me bad. I'm going to keep chasing love that represents my father because, you know, that just reminds me of it. I'm going to seek validation to prove that I'm worthy enough to be in this. No. Once you do that inner child healing, you don't have to do all that. Instead, you choose you. I'm safe. I'm worthy. I'm this. I'm that. I don't have to do this. So I walk away. So think about it this way. There's a huge difference between 1 and 2. Number 1, someone who hasn't healed those wounds since childhood, and so it manifests behaviors that affects all aspects of their life. in a negative way. And then there's number 2, someone who took the time to dissect the behaviors within, did the inner healing, and healed those childhood wounds with or without validation of others, seeking closure within themselves and finding security within themselves. With all that healed, your behavior changes, and it fights against anyone who ignites those insecurities when it was not healed. So now that it's healed and those people are treating you like this, or these behaviors are coming up again, instead of doing the normal reaction of those unhealed wounds, you are now doing a reaction where it's like, I am a stronger me, and I'm walking away. And now you're doing things in a more positive way. You're standing up for yourself. You're not allowing certain behaviors from other people. You're not seeking validation in others. You're not seeking love from others. You're not mistreating yourself. You're talking to yourself in a dialogue that's positive. You have manifested a behavior different in a positive way because you healed what you needed to do and did the proper self-work to do that. It all starts with you. That's it. And I thought that was such a beautiful thing that I had learned in therapy, because and it's something that I just want to before I even say that, I want to remind you guys, this is a series of letting go. This is a series of constantly doing the work, right? And it's okay if you fail sometimes. It's okay if you revert back to those behaviors. I just don't want you to stay there. Once you do an error, realize it, acknowledge it. Don't beat yourself too hard about it, and then you jump back into the healing process, and you remind yourself how this made you feel. This error made me feel like this, so you know what? I'm going to keep going, keeping that in mind, right? So don't beat yourself. It is a constant series of letting go. It's a constant series of healing. That's what healing is. It's not easy, right? Because trust me, there's been times where people revert me back to that inner child of being like, I have to prove myself. No, they're wrong. Like, they're not saying the truth. And it's like, okay, they can say whatever they want to say and think what they want to think. I know what the truth is, and I don't have to convince no motherfucker. Like, no, I don't. I'm at a point where it's like, why? What's the point? I'm not, no, right? So I just thought that was an amazing thing to learn from therapy, because a lot of people out here do a lot of behaviors where it's not healthy, and they seek that within their relationships. They seek that within them, within others, and they kind of just run away from doing the proper self-work, because that's easy to do. It's so much easier to pin the blame on someone else. It's easier to not look and reflect in behaviors of yourself, and because it's seeing yourself in a very negative way, but it really isn't, it really isn't. I think it's just a misconception that we tend to, humanly, we do that for some reason. It's like psychology. I listened to a podcaster, I forgot her name, but she does the podcast again. I keep bringing her up. Do You Fucking Mind? And she's a neuroscientist, and I listen to her every single day, because not only does she talk about topics where it's about healing or breakups or friendships or this and that, every topic in the book, she also talks about it in a scientific standpoint within the brain, because that's her field. She's a neuroscientist. So she really teaches you how to manipulate your brain, or she really teaches you why your brain or your mind goes the way it does, because it is naturally supposed to do that. And I thought that was a really cool thing to bring out there, because listen to her podcast. It's fucking amazing. I aspire myself to be like her. Not really, but she's awesome. And I hope that you guys out there will understood what I was saying. It could be a little confusing. Point is that, number one, Understand that there's behaviors that you are doing right now that is a result from your childhood wounds. Really make a list of those behaviors, of what you do in relationships, what you do in friendships, what you do with yourself, how do you talk to yourself, and then try to bring like a tree and the root. Find the root of where that's coming from. Why do I feel the need to, you ask yourself these questions. Why do I do this? Why do I do this when I get angry? Why do I do this when someone comes at me? Why do I do this when someone leaves me? Find the root, and from that root, pinpoint where that come from your family or something that you experienced, a traumatic event, whatever the case may be, whatever experiences that brought you to react the way that you do, and then acknowledging that, and then start healing those wounds of where it was by doing it with yourself, not seek it with anyone else. So with that being said, thank you so much for listening to Save Your Tears podcast. I am so happy that the podcast is doing so well, and I hope that this episode truly really helped you heal that childhood wound and that the inner child within you, because they deserve to feel safe. They deserve to feel love and happiness and security, and they didn't deserve to grow up. You guys as a child did not deserve to grow up the way that you did or experience the experiences that weren't so great. And I hope that this episode has ignited some tools within you to really start giving yourself the self-love that you needed when you were younger and now. So keep in mind that you can listen to our podcast within Amazon, iTunes, YouTube, name every social media on the book except on Snapchat. Nope. You can follow us on Instagram by Save Your Tears Podcast. With that being said, thank you so much for listening. Until next time, this is Wendy. Good damn bye.
Thank you.